right, let's just make sure that everything here is all set to go. Um, all right, let's see here. All right. So, right off the bat, for anybody who may join the live stream, I just need to say that I'm not going to be answering any comments or questions when it comes to this. I created this because there's a few things and a discussion that I need to have, which I've been meaning to have for a very, very long time. This stream, in essence, it is geared towards those people in my life who are friends and family, and it's not generally speaking geared towards the YouTube community. If you get something out of this that you want to stick around for, that's great. I enjoy the conversation, and I'm hoping that this video will start healthy conversation about stuff that I sort of discuss. So in essence, this entire video is going to be my thoughts, my perspective, my opinions on certain things and stuff I've been thinking about for a few years now. If I'm honest, I've been thinking about this stuff since high school, and I haven't until recently felt like I had the nerve or the guts or really the integrity to sort of talk about this kind of stuff. And I want everybody to know who watches this that I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm not trying to point fingers at anyone. I just want to share sort of my thought process and stuff that I've been keeping super, super buried down and my thoughts on things. And I just want to start a discussion because at the end of the day, if I'm going to be honest, there's a lot of things that I want to talk about with my friends and family, but it's always been kind of taboo. And now I think it's only appropriate after so much has happened that I need to have this discussion. So let's get right into it. So I suppose I'll just rip off the Band-Aid. I don't know how long this stream is going to be. It's going to be however long it needs to be. And for my friends and family who are hopefully going to watch this, I just hope and pray that you stay until the very, very end. And if you want to contact me afterwards so we can have a discussion about what I talk about here, then great. If you don't, if you just want to cut me out of your life and stop talking to me, then that's your choice. And I respect you in that. But let's just get right into it. The first thing I want to discuss, sort of the first topic, is religion. So for any of my friends and family who don't know, I grew up throughout the entirety of my life in religion. It's been sort of a part of my life and a part of my bloodline's not the word I would use here. Oh, and also just on another note, this video is not going to be edited. So if there are awkward pauses or points where I sort of stumble over my words, it is what it is. But back to religion. So pretty much my entire life, I have grown in some kind of religious organization or another. The one that I've predominantly been a part of has been the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the Mormon Church, as it's more commonly known. Although I know that the church, it doesn't really want to recognize itself by that sort of nickname anymore. The one thing I want to say, and some of the things that I've sort of thought about through my stream of consciousness and through, I would say, ever since the very, very end of high school, I've just had thoughts and questions. And for me, at this point in my life, I've just got to be honest. I know that it's not just the LDS Church, but pretty much every organized religion out there says that they have all the answers, that they are the one true religion, that they have everything. For me, though, if I'm going to be honest, I look at a situation, I look at the LDS Church, I look at the Catholicism, I look at pretty much every kind of religion out there, and I'm not sorry to say that saying that, in my opinion, saying that you have all the answers and it's the one true church and that everything is where it is, I'm sorry, it's just ignorance. That is my opinion, and that's where I stand. For me, every religion is flawed. Every view of the afterlife is flawed. And for me now, I'm not comfortable saying, guess what? I'm a part of this religion. I'm associated with that religion over there. Me, I'm more comfortable just being a very spiritually minded person, learning as much as I can from every sort of religious denomination and organization out there because I think each one has value. But I can't say that I'm comfortable being part of one organized religion saying that is my religion. Because at the end of the day, I think every religion has flaws. And I'm not going to go too much into that right here, right now, because I think that's a better discussion for a later time. But whether it's Catholicism or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or Protestantism, is that a word? I don't know. But the being a Protestant or a Jehovah's Witness or any organized religion, they all have their flaws. They all try to cover them up in some way, but to be honest, they all have their flaws and some of them are deep and dark flaws that I have seen and I have questioned, and it's one of those things where religion as a whole is not perfect. And anybody and everyone that says that, oh, guess what? This is definitely what happens in the afterlife. This is what happens. It's ignorance. It is pure and utter ignorance, in my opinion, because unless you've died and come back to life, you can't 100% say that you know what is going to happen or what it's going to look like. I'll just speak sort of from my experience. In the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we are taught that when the church was reinstated into society, Joseph Smith was visited by an angel, and then eventually he went up a nearby mountain and he was visited by God and Jesus Christ. And that's how he got that's how the whole organization started. And I think a story like that is good. For me, I look at that story and I'm like, I think there is some merit there. I think, but I can't say that that's what's actually happened. It might be 100%. That might actually be the facts. But at the same time, I don't know because I wasn't there. I wasn't born in the like early to mid 1800s. Same thing with the afterlife. In the Bible or the Book of Mormon or the Doctrine and Covenants or any kind of religious document, say like the Torah or trying to think of other religious books or text, but it just comes back to this is like this is just one of the many questions that I've had when it comes to religion, saying that you 100% know that this is what it's going to be like after you die. I'm sorry, but once again, for me, that is just pure ignorance because unless you have actually died, you can't say that you know what it's going to be like. Also, another thing that I've just got to, like I said, stream of consciousness, so I might stop here and there. But for me, looking at religion, for me, the benefit of religious institutions is sort of the principles that they teach about just generally speaking being a good person. I think that learning certain aspects of every kind of religious institution, I think it has its merit. For one thing, Buddhism, or it's like Buddhism or Middle Eastern styles of religion. A lot of them incorporate meditation and peaceful practices. And while we may gear that towards like being prayer on this side, it's like learning to just stay calm and stay peaceful and quiet and just putting your head down every once in a while and just letting the peace roll in. It's one of those things where that's very important. And for me, in the world we are right now, that's sort of missing. But once again, I'm not trying to point a finger here and say that religion's a bad thing. I'm just saying that I think there's a lot of ignorance. I think there's a lot of misinformation. And I think there's a lot of everything, like bad information when it comes to religious organizations. I think that as a whole, not just like pointing fingers at one or another, like all of them. I think there are flaws with every single one because most of the time, every single one is saying they have the answers for everything. It's a big problem because I can't look at life and I can't see everything and everything that's going on in the world. And I can't just sit back and be an automaton, be a robot and say, this is 100% the way it's got to be. This is 100% the way things have to operate. There is one thing. I know I said I wasn't going to dive too deep, but it's just one of the things that I've got to speak personally. It's pretty easy to point fingers at the Catholic Church and the flaws that they've had. For me, like I said, I can only speak from my experience. I could speak from the research I have done from other religious organizations. But like I said, most of the time when it comes to this, I just want to start a discussion. But when I was growing up in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we were always taught from a very, very young age, you know what, you need to abstain from seeing rated R movies or seeing stuff of really bad content. And for me, the more and more I grow up, I have seen a great deal of rated R movies. And while there is some merit, there are some films that are absolute trash that create content that doesn't add any value. If I'm going to be honest, most of the time, great films like let's see here, like Good Will Hunting or a show like BoJack Horseman or Patriots Day, where there is uncomfortable subject matter, where there is uncomfortable sequences. The fact of the matter for me, I've already said this once, but the show BoJack Horseman, I finished watching it recently, and for me, that show, with all of its mature and adult content, has ultimately made me, I feel, a better person because I have such a better appreciation for life. And if I had, it's a show that talks about anxiety and depression and loss of friendships and the relationships of the people around you and how life is just so precious and so valuable. And if it wasn't for something like that, if I had adhered to what the quote unquote guidelines or rules of what I was taught since I was very, very young, I wouldn't have had that experience. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you saying that, in my opinion, BoJack Horseman is the most important show to come out of the 21st century. Because especially in the year 2020, the rampant increase of just depression and the statistical nature of depression from people around my age range and older, it's rampant. Mental health is such an important topic, and blocking things out because they're uncomfortable to hear about, that is also ignorant. And steering away from subject matter that is uncomfortable, that is pure ignorance. Of course, when it comes to all forms of media, you've got to kind of be smart. You got to know who you are. You got to know what you want your children to see. You got to know what you think the appropriate age for seeing something is. I'm not saying that, just because a certain content is released, that everybody of every age group needs to see it. For instance, I have younger relatives. I don't want them watching BoJack Horseman. Once they get older into their adulthood, it is something I'm going to recommend, because something like BoJack Horseman or Patriots Day, or, I made a feature film that's releasing in the fall. That film is a rated R film that talks about depression and loss and just these important subject matters. But when it comes to, I can't speak for all religions, but the major headline streams, subject matter like this, it's stuff that they want to avoid. And I don't know why, because it's so important. So at the end of the day, honestly, I could spend like 3 hours just talking about my opinions on spirituality and religion and my thought process and where I agree and disagree with the principles and what they teach. But what it comes down to at the end of the day is, for me personally, I cannot tie myself down to a singular religion, because in my opinion, it's inherently flawed. Organized religion as an inherently as an organization is flawed. I mean, you don't have to go too far back to see that really, really terrible things have been done in the name of religion. You don't have to go too far back that a good portion of the time, religion as a whole, people have only had their own self-interest. And for me, I find it so funny that we're taught when we're grown up, hate the sin, not the sinner. But at the same time, we're also taught, you know what? Don't judge other people. And I'm sorry, judgment and judging other people, it happens. When I was, growing up, I guess I didn't realize it till I got older, till I was much older, like in my early 20s. I didn't realize that with all the teaching of judging the sin and not the sinner and not judging people, it is an inherently flawed system because most of the time, I would say 95 to 100% of the time, if you're judging the sin, you're judging the person who's doing it. And also, I have a very big problem with the way religion just views people and the way people it's like I don't I get so angry because I guess I was really fortunate. I grew up in a household where I was encouraged. I was encouraged to think for myself and to not take things at face value and to question life essentially, to find my own answers, to be my own person. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I love theater. Theater is so empathetic and it taught me to love everybody around me. And when I see people judging people for the color of their skin or their sexual orientation or the gender they identify themselves with or the pronouns they identify themselves with, I have to shake my head and just say, what is wrong with society? What is so wrong that we honestly are willing to step out there and say, guess what? What you're doing is wrong. You know what? You're not bothering me. You're not trying to take things out of my life. You're not trying to rip my family apart. What you're trying to do is inherently wrong, even if it's your own personal choice. Yes, I realize that when it comes to anything, when it comes to dietary habits, veganism, vegetarianism, or religion, or some of the other things that we will get into bigger discussions in on this live stream, or politics, which is funny enough going to be the next subject matter, or fan bases. There are the extremes. There are the large extremes when it comes to things. There are so many extremes, and those are not good. Those are not okay because the extremes are the people who are trying to tell you that what you're doing is wrong and you need to change because you're awful if you believe a certain way. But 95% of the time, that's not how things are run. Taking care of people, not judging them for their life choices. It's a big problem in today's world. Empathy has gone completely out the window. One another beautiful thing about the arts, about theater, is the fact that empathy is just about the first thing drilled into your head to not judge people based on what they try to do or how they live their lives, to love people. Don't judge people. And I am not saying I'm not guilty of this. I am guilty of judging. I'm guilty of the stuff I'm talking about here. Okay, I am. But at the end of the day, I've been working so hard to make myself better. And I can tell you without question, like, here's the thing, homosexuality and being gay or bi or anything, when it comes to religion, if anybody who is gay or bi or trans, if anybody would try to walk into a building, every eye in the room would be looking at those people. You know what I would do? I would go right up to those people and shake their hand and say, hey, because if there's one thing I have learned, people who know who they are, people who, whether that's their orientation or what they want to do with their lives or who they are. People who know who they are from the bottom of their being to the top of their being. They are the most joyous and most enjoyable and the most fun people to be around because you don't have to be afraid to be yourself around them. They're not afraid to be themselves around you. And for me, when I see the way the world is turning, when I see where the world is going, it sickens me. It keeps me awake at night. It keeps me depressed. It's one of the reasons why I need therapy. It's one of the reasons. More often than not, I'm either tearing up or crying because people judge people. I wish I could see more love. I understand that people care about people, and I understand that's not I understand that I understand there's a great deal of love in the world. I do. I just think there needs to be more of it. It's one of the reasons why inherently I prefer to be a spiritual person, not a religious person, because religion as a whole, like I've been saying, is inherently flawed, at least in my opinion. People saying that they have all the answers, people saying that they are, quote, the real and truest church on the earth today. That's just inherently ignorant. People saying, because of some text, because of something that someone has said, obviously they have all the answers. And there are going to be people who disagree with me. And like I said before, I'm not doing this to open a can of worms. I'm not doing this to if you're in a religious organization and you are happy, I'm happy for you. If it can make you the best version of yourself, I'm happy for you. I'm just saying that for me, being part of a religious institution and holding myself down to that, it doesn't make me happy. If I'm going to be honest, I stopped going to church a long time ago, and it's for the very reasons I'm talking about. It's because I see the flaws. I see the judgment. I see so many things. I do see the beauty of what religious institutions have to offer. But for me, I prefer to be a spiritually educated person and taking lots of opinions and not just taking one at face value. And will this give me some backlash? I don't know, probably. We'll see. But I have to be honest and I have to be who I am. I can't hold myself back anymore. It is what it is. Now to move on to the next. Jeez. Gosh, I didn't think this was going to be as heavy, at least on me as it has been. And well, okay, let's just rip off another Band-Aid. Something I never really talk about with people. Politics. Shall we? I'm not going to once again, when it comes to this, I'm going to give kind of vagueness when it comes to my deal with politics. I'm just going to sort of talk about my issues and why I never really talk about this stuff. Because I want to save the more deep, in-depth conversations for talking with people one-on-one. Because if you ask me, social media is great, texting is great, but I would prefer to have conversations with people face-to-face. I really, honestly would. And in today's world, busyness, hustling, social media, texting, like all of this, and if I'm going to be honest, I'm part of the problem. I do enjoy texting. But I also enjoy being with people. I enjoy talking with people face to face and having good conversations. I enjoy that so much more than I enjoy social media or texting. It is what it is. But when it comes to politics, seeing what the political spectrum of this country has been the past decade, I've been so disgusted. Seeing people divided, seeing people not being able to have a healthy conversation, it sickened me. seeing how it has destroyed people, destroyed relationships, destroyed families. I'm gonna be honest, when it comes to my own personal family, I'm afraid. I don't really ever talk about politics with friends or family, and it's for the divisive nature of it. I don't talk about politics or my political views or anything like that with people because I know if I did, there's a possibility for conflict, not healthy conversation, but conflict that ends with the destruction of a friendship or relationship with a family member. It's the reason why I don't talk about this stuff. But seeing what the political nature of things has done to people, and I mean, this does go back to religion too, because like it or not, religion, politics kind of have the same negative effect. And I'm expecting actually, no, it's kind of already happened. If I'm gonna be honest, when it comes to religion, for the most part, everybody that I grew up with, every person who I was with in the LDS church that I grew up with, I haven't heard from pretty much any single one of them in a very, very long time. And for me, it kind of feels because I've been distant, because I haven't, been to church in a little while. That there is that stigma that, hey, guess what? So and so left. And it's not just the LDS church. From what I have heard, it's something that cascades over every religious institution. But it's one of those things where, hey, guess what? So and so isn't going to church anymore. So and so isn't here. So we just need to start distancing ourselves more and more and more and more and more and just cease conversation with them. It's one of those things where it's also another reason why. Because if I'm gonna be honest, I've had better and closer relationships with people outside of religion. When it comes to the people I know now, the friends that I hold near and dear to my heart, I mean, for the most part, they have kind of the same philosophies I do. And they're beautiful people, and I love them to death. But the thing that kind of saddens me and sickens me is the fact that I have a closer relationship with them than anyone that I considered my friends growing up. My entire life, I have lost friends, I've lost people, I have grown distant. But the people that I've met in college, the people who I'm connected to now, who really aren't connected to religion in any way, if I'm gonna be honest, they have been kinder, more supportive, out there for me, to stick their necks out for me and to wanna build a relationship more than anyone that I've ever grown up with. Because pretty much everybody that I grew up with the religion that I was a part of, it feels kinda like they've disowned me in a way. And you know what? What I've gotta say to that is, if that's how you wanna look at it, then good riddance. If you're if you're allowing your beliefs, your thoughts, your feelings about the whole situation to dictate how you feel about me, then fine. It was nice knowing you for the time that I did, but if that's how you're going to treat me, if that's how you're going to look at me, then I don't need you in my life. I don't need more toxicity. I have known a lot of toxic people in my life. I have been friends with toxic people, and I am more than happy to just let them go by the wayside because at this point, I want to be happy. I want to be happy. I want to be around happy people. I don't want negativity. I don't want toxic people. I just want to live a life that I am proud of, that I can feel something, that I don't have to feel like I need to hide myself or change myself or do anything for people. If there's one thing, I know we are circling back to the religious nature of things, guys, but I guess this will be the longest subject. I know I steered into politics, but we're going to go back to religion because the biggest thing I need to get off of my chest for any of my friends or family who are watching is that for my mental health, it's the reason why I prefer to be spiritually educated and not religious organization educated, is that I would say being part of a religious institution was the most damaging thing that ever happened to my mental health. Always questioning if I was, I've inherently always had a guilty conscience. And you know what? There are, it's funny. I remember one time when I was in a theater class in high school, and a friend of mine in it was a playwriting class. It was a good class, really educational, and I had a lot of fun. But a buddy of mine, he wrote the script and he said, "Here, I want you to read this part." And honestly, it was the first time that I ever sort of it was the first time I ever sort of cursed on stage. Like everything up to the point, I had never cursed on stage. I had never been part of anything. And as soon as it happened, after after it was done, I went off stage and it felt like I was having a mental breakdown. And I had to call my mom and I said, I don't know what's happening. I don't want to be punished. I feel like I've done something so inherently wrong and I don't know how to feel about myself. And my mother got on the phone with me and she just said, "Well, Cody, it you were playing a character, right?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "Then what are you worried about? What are you honestly worried about? You were being a character. You weren't being you. If you keep your vocabulary and your talk in day-to-day life fairly clean, you're playing a character. You're on stage. You're in a world of fiction. There's Why should you feel guilty?" And I realized she was right. But so many other things. I know one of the most damaging thing was when I went off to college out west. I went to Brigham Young University, Idaho, and after 6 semesters of being out there, after 3 of the most damaging years of my life, I came back home, and there's a reason for that. It's because while I was out there, I never felt like I was good enough. I felt like I was being constantly judged for who I was. I felt like I wasn't gonna amount to anything. And then when I was at the lowest of lows, and I mean, I was at a certain point, I was thinking about killing myself when I was out there. I went and I tried to talk to my roommates about it first, and what my roommates said to me hurt me in a way that I couldn't imagine. One thing you guys should know is that because of the roommate situation and because I felt like I was being so harshly judged while I was out there, I had to switch apartments very, very often. One thing you guys should know is that when it comes to if there's a place that has a religious center, I mean, it doesn't matter what religion it is, but you go to a place that is very religious, it's very centric with a religious denomination. You can meet positively the worst kind of religious people. And this was my case. Every single semester I was at college at Brigham Young University, Idaho, those are the kinds of people that I was roomed with. And when I hit my lowest of lows, I went to talk to one of my roommates about how I was feeling, and he told me flat out, I told him, "I feel miserable about myself. I don't know what to do. I feel like I want to put a bullet through my head." He said, "Well, have you tried the atonement of Jesus Christ?" You know what? That was great. And things would only get worse because I tried seeing counseling while I was out there. And I think this is really where my stigma of trying to get counseling really got cemented in my brain and why it's taken me so long to actually actively go seek counseling. Because the counselors that I went to meet at Brigham Young University, Idaho, essentially told me the same thing. They told me that I was not reading my Book of Mormon enough, that I was not praying enough, that I wasn't doing the spiritual things enough in regards to the LDS church, that I was not doing what I needed to. And there's a few other reasons why I've been against seeking help and seeking therapy that stems back to my early childhood, but I'm not going to get into that because that's long gone, and I've put that to bed. That part of my life is just I never want to go back there. And but also when I was at Brigham Young University, Idaho, the first semester when I was there, I was on a cross country team, and because I was even as I was so miserable, I ran so much that I got down to it was like 105 to 113 ish pounds, uh, and I didn't really want to change because in the words of the wonderful show BoJack Horseman, at a certain point, I was fetishizing my own despair, my own misery, and my entire life, even now, I've had so many struggles. And being a part of the LDS church didn't really ever help because I always felt so badly about myself. Still to this day, I struggle with that because so much of my life I was taught, there are certain things, even little things, even things that could be considered natural to humanity, where if you either do too much of it or if you look into it or if you anything, God's going to punish you. I know I wanted to talk more and I'm going to talk more, but this is really the point I'm trying to point home is the fact, and I guess this is kind of a form of therapy for any of my friends or family that are listening to me. Fact of the matter is this: I have been miserable my entire life. And a good portion of that, I would say, comes back to being raised in the LDS church. Like I said before, if you've been happy, if you've been a part of the church and you're happy and you think it's allowing you to live your best self, I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm really not. I'm just trying to say my experience, to say the things I have been too afraid of to say my entire life. It's funny. There's always a little voice at the back of my head. There's always been a little voice there, but specifically when I was going to college out west, when I was in a religious institution, when I was doing all this, there was a little voice that said, "You know what? You're not good enough." That voice is still kind of there. But it always came back to the fact that it's like Guess what? You're not good enough. You're a piece of garbage. You always will be a piece of garbage. You know why everybody in your life has left you? It's because you've abandoned your morals. You have abandoned everything that you once stood for. You're not a good person anymore. I mean, look at this. Everybody who you once knew, everybody that you grew up with, everybody that you went to college with, everybody has abandoned you. Everyone. But now I look at this entire situation and I realize, maybe those people really weren't. No, it's not even a maybe. Those people weren't friends. Being ostracized because you're different, being separated from people, not having friends, people who abandon you just because they don't like your view of things or they think you're too different or they think you're straying from the right path. It's one of those things where those are the kinds of people I don't want to associate myself with. I would prefer to be around a group of people who know who they are, who accept everyone for who they are and where they're at, and understanding that life is a journey. The people who have just left me alone in the dark, essentially, I'm done with them. I'm willing to have conversation. That's what all this is about. But I can tell you one thing. At a certain point, and this was after I came back, this was the year of 2017. This is when I came back, and right before I actually started going to school at the University of Southern Maine, where I met some of my closest friends that have been friends and who have been with me for 3 years, which is more than I can say to anyone who I went to school with out in Brigham Young University, Idaho. There are a few, there are exceptions. But there was a point where I hit my lowest of lows. The only person I had in my life were my mother and father, and I'm so grateful for Sally and Burton Curtis for being the loving parents that they are, because they're the ones who ultimately helped me get through my hardest times. But nobody else was there. Nobody else reached out. Nobody, and I don't really expect much of people, and I usually I think I'm gonna partially blame this on social media, because I'm always the person to reach out. I'm always the person to say, hey, how are you doing? Do you need something? I'm just checking in, like something like that. If we get a project going on, I'm always the first person to reach out. But before I went to the University of Southern Maine, where I felt more people like me, it was crickets. I didn't hear a word. And from those same people, I have not heard a word. Nobody has reached out. Nobody's decided to drop a line and say, "Hey, Cody, are you okay? Are you depressed? Do you want to talk about anything? Is there something going on that you want to talk?" Nobody. You know what the difference is here? The difference is here is while I was going to the University of Southern Maine, there was also a time where I hit my lowest of lows. It was definitely a bit different than Brigham Young University, Idaho, because it wasn't like being bogged down with a guilty conscience or stuff like that. It was more of overwhelming stress that led to depression, where I definitely should have gone to see a counselor for, but I didn't. Almost every single person in my friend group at the University of Southern Maine, they reached out to me. They reached out and they checked in. And those people to this day are some of the best friends I could have ever asked for. They're the people I want to support. As far as everyone I grew up with, I'm just going to say here and now, if you want to talk, that's fine. But I think I'm done. I think I'm done with pretty much everybody I grew up with, because the last thing I need in my life is toxicity. The last thing I need is fickle friends who abandon you just because you make your own life decisions. I don't need that in my life. And the way I see it, with toxicity out the window, out of leaving an empty space, it allows light to come in and fill in that space and make life so much happier, so much more beautiful. And I'm ready for that light. I've been ready for it. And like I said, it's the reason why I'm here. It's the reason why I'm talking with you. Once again, I just got to reiterate everything I say. It's just my experience. It's my opinion. And if anyone wants to have a discussion, that's fine. But at the end of the day, I'm realizing who I am. And I'm ready to continue my life that way. Now, back to politics. Back to politics on a, somewhat lighter note, but the division that has happened across the country and across the world, it's destructive. It's destructive and disgusting. I mean, all you got to do is look at what happened on January 6th of this year to see that the separation that we have across this planet, something's got to change. There, we can't continue to just live life and act like just because somebody's politically different than you are, that gives you the right to bog them down, to treat them like trash, and to completely separate yourself from them. Look, there are people that I disagree with politically, but I'm more than happy to have a conversation with them about it. What I do not agree with is people who will shut your opinion down just so they can validate their own, because that's not how you have a conversation. That, in my opinion, it's a political version of destructive criticism, not constructive criticism. Because for those of you who don't know, and I wish there was more people who did know the difference between deconstruction and construction is that deconstruction tears something down without any kind of hints of how to rebuild it. Construction, in the construction process, you may have to tear some things down. However, you tear those things down and you provide something so that when you work on the next thing, it becomes bigger and better and becomes the best version that it needs to be. That's construction, destruction. Okay. And unfortunately, there's a lot of destruction in the world right now. Constructive criticism, I don't know what happened. Constructive conversation, I don't know what happened. I really don't. Honestly, I really don't know what happened. Like, what happened to get us to such a point to where, whether you're talking about politics, religion, a fan base of a certain property, or anything else, good constructive conversation has gone out the window. Like, it's gone. And I really don't know what it is. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat or independent. There's got to be something that we can all find some commonality in. We've got to find some common ground here, because if we don't, I'm not saying the world is on a path to destruction, but this is what I am saying. I'm saying that we could be. I'm saying it's a possibility. If we don't find a way to have conversations and build relationships instead of destroying and breaking and burning bridges, there is absolutely no way that we're going to create a better society, a better community, or a better world. And this is stuff I'm working on too. I want better relationships. You know what the funny thing is? Every theatrical or film-related production I've been a part of, every single one of them is like a little community. And every single one of them, there have been problems. But you know what we did? Every production, doesn't matter if it was film or theater, every single production, there were problems. But we came together as a cast and crew or independently. We talked about those issues, and then we moved on. We found common ground and then we built the relationship up again. Why can't we do that in everyday life? Why can't we do that when talking about politics or religion or movies or video games or all that stuff? Why can't we find common ground? It disgusts me. And once again, I surround myself with people who allow me to think differently. I surround myself with people who allow me to think, who allow me to think, but also have, they have their own opinions. And I may or may not disagree with those opinions. However, I sit back, I listen, I think about it, and then I come to my own conclusions. And I may agree or disagree, but if I disagree, the beautiful thing about having differing opinions is the ability to come together and have a discussion about it. Uh, I'm going to use an example here. You may think it's a bad example, but the principle still stands. We should be able to have a discussion about politics like we do with a movie that we have disagreements on. I understand that politics, there are a lot more imperative issues when it comes to the political nature of things and subject matter like foreign policy or global warming. There are people are going to find themselves on different sides of the aisle. Those discussions are 100% more important than talking about a movie that we disagree on. However, the principle is still there. If you can talk about a movie you disagree on, and you can talk about the points and try to find some common ground, you should be able to do the same thing with politics. I don't understand why we can't. Yes, the last 10 years have been so chaotic and so divisive, and lots of things have happened that should not have happened. That is sure. However, I don't know why we can't talk about it. We should be able to build relationships and have discussions about this kind of stuff. But apparently we can't. Apparently, the world has decided and dictated over the past 10 years that if you have a differing opinion, you are a piece of garbage. You should be shut down. And guess what? You got a different opinion, everybody. Keep your mouth shut. What happened? The world's had issues, political issues, economic issues, jeez. Now, I thought the last year when the pandemic hit, when the pandemic hit, there was one thing I was hoping for. I was hoping that the pandemic would allow us to come together more. I honestly thought that it would have given us that ability, but apparently not. When the pandemic hit, all the political stuff and everything, it's like the country and the world is more divided than it ever has been. And I want that to change. I want to work to make that to change. We should be providing good for the world. We shouldn't, and you know what the number one thing we can do to help the world, to help our communities, to help society, in my personal opinion, it's building relationships with people. And unfortunately, as much as I would try, I'm just one voice. I know that I can't be the voice of change. I know for a fact that the actions I do are only going to be multiplied if I have more people who agree, who want to also build relationships, who don't want to tear them down, who want to heal things that may have been torn apart. I don't know what's happened. I really, really don't. The world is crazy. In terms of politics, very much like with religion, I know I went a bit deeper on the religious side, but when it comes to politics, for me, if we can learn to come together and to have great discussions and talk about subject matter that's uncomfortable and come to a conclusion and still remain friends and be able to build relationships, that for me is a victory. That for me is at the end of the day. And this is the transition point where I talk about the next thing. It's why I am who I am. It's why I'm a storyteller. For me, I want to be part of stuff that matters. I want to be part of the conversation. I want to be part of telling stories that can help benefit the rest of the world, that can help benefit making a positive social dynamic and social change. I want to help create stories and craft things. I want to build things. I want to create things that will allow the rest of the world to grow and change and multiply and glorify its own positivity. Maybe not glorify its own positivity. That seems a bit egotistical, but I mean, I think the point is still solid. Me, the reason why I created a film that talks about family relations and depression and suicide and those subject matter. The reason why I enjoy things like Patriots Day, like BoJack Horseman, like literally I'm halfway through Bo Burnham, who, if you guys don't know who Bo Burnham is, he's a pretty prolific comedian in my opinion. He's very profane. He doesn't really have a filter when it comes to his mouth or the subject he talks about, and I appreciate that about him. But I'm halfway through his new comedy special, Inside, watching that, plus, reading from experts like Nietzsche. I'm really just hoping that I'm pronouncing that right. I'm probably not, but philosophers reading and learning and creating. The reason why I enjoy subject matter, particularly when it comes to BoJack Horseman, is that stuff like this, stuff that gets you to think. It's the most important thing. Things that get you to think and try to apply. Maybe not a drastic, because you do things slowly and surely, and it's always positive by the end. But the one thing I will say is that less and less people are trying to create a dynamic change, and I don't know why. I don't know. It's the world we live in is damaged. It has a lack of empathy, a lack of people looking out for others, a lack of so much. And it needs to change. Something needs to change. The world that I want to live in is about love and kindness, not judgments and burning bridges. That's the world I want to live in, and that's the world I want to try to help build. So, religion, politics, my view of things. I think that might be the end of it. I know this is a longer video, but like I said before, this video is specifically for my family and friends, and I've gotta I've got to get my opinion out there. I've had so much stuff cooped up inside me for so long. And talking about religion, my views on it, just to kind of recap that, I'm not comfortable with being a part of any kind of institution. I don't care what religious organization you are. Religion in and of itself is inherently flawed. And nobody has all the answers. Nobody knows what it's going to be like after you die. People who say they do, people who say they have all the answers, people who say this is how it's going to be. They're just people making noise. Every religion has a leader. I'm going to be honest. They don't know everything. They don't. Every religion has a leader. But every leader is just as ignorant as the next person. People are going to disagree with me on this, I'm sure. But at the end of the day, nobody knows. Nobody really knows anything. And people who say they do, they are inherently ignorant. Inherently ignorant. Same thing with politics, if I'm going to be honest. You don't have to have a PhD to see that the uproar and the divisiveness and all this stuff is from ignorance. It's from ignorance and vitriol and vexation. And it needs to change. We need to change. We need to be better. And so, for anyone who's watching this, for any of my family and friends who are watching this, I love you guys. I really do. And if you're hurt by what I say, if you disagree with what I say, that's okay. It's natural. We're supposed to have differing opinions because the beauty of differing opinions? It allows us to sit down and have a conversation. And in today's day and age, that's also another problem I have with religion and politics, because religion and politics can be so ingrained in a person's psyche that they believe that anything anybody else says is wrong without actually wanting to learn from them. So, I think I'm going to leave it here. But for anybody and everybody who is watching this, just want to say, take care of yourself. Beauty of life is you get to experience so many things. You get to become your own person and live a life that you can be proud of. And you deserve to be happy. Everyone does. Everyone deserves a chance at happiness. So if there's anybody at the end of this, if you want to contact me, if you want to talk with me, if you want to open a discussion, I'm here. I'm more than happy to listen. And if there's anybody out there, like I said before, if you're angry at me, you don't want to open a door to discussion, and you just kind of want to, metaphorically speaking, slam the door in my face and not listen to what I have to say, you want to break off communication, well, it was nice knowing you. But as I said before, I don't need the toxicity. So if that's what you're going to do, so long. But if we can have a conversation, I think that's the most important thing. Because with discussion and conversation comes education, and education, at the end of the day, I think is actually the most important thing. So I'm going to leave it here. Thank you okay. So first of all, this video has been an hour and almost 5 minutes long. And I just want to say thank you for everybody who's decided to stick around. But take care of yourself, everybody. I know it's been a really, really trying time. But yeah, Li- Like this is it feels so good for me to finally get this off of my chest. And thank you for anybody who stopped by and watched the whole entire thing or listened to it. Thank you. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for listening to me. And as stated, for like the fifth time, like a broken record, if you want to open up a discussion and talk, I'm here for it. Have a good day, everybody.